You have to run right now.
Yeah.
Like, let's just say some Godzilla comes here. Okay, we have to run.
Yeah.
If you don't do any cardio, I don't care how hard you train.
You're fucked, yeah.
You're not lasting, man. You're done. You're gonna be winded and you're gonna be eaten.
How many more days until that 25 pounds turns into fat?
You've already raised your normal caloric intake without even increasing food.
Yeah.
If you're competing in the NPC and you're natural, you're kind of going into war, a gunfight with a sword. How annoying is it that everyone stole the road to pro from you, Anthony?
It's whatever.
Do you think a coach is necessary in order to prep correctly?
Emotionally, as a coach, what's the hardest thing about prep with your clients? Can you get it up 3 to 4 weeks out? I know Kyle's a guru, but how does he know what to pull during the cutting phases? All right, you ready? What podcast number is this?
6, 5,
Intro it.
6.
Intro it.
Correct, it's 6.
Yes. I think that Jesse was number 5, but corrections were 4. Yeah, 6.
Okay. Well, guys, welcome back to IRONBROS podcast. This is now episode 6, and we are back at our home, in our home turf,
Yeah.
here at the gym.
Thank you guys so much for the support with the last 2 podcasts. That was cool. Or having our first guest being the Trent twins, and then having Jesse James West follow up with that. Really cool. Great friends of ours. So, and the response was really good.
No, for sure. So all the support thus far has been exactly what we wanted. That was the goal when we started back in episode 1. What the goal was to kind of get out there and make a difference, right? So
a lot of people in the gym come up, like gym members I haven't spoken to here ever. It's like some guy that just said, hey man, I don't watch social media. Didn't even know you're a social media person, but saw the podcast. It's good. And I'm like, cool, because I'm not like fully comfortable with this yet. So I hear that it's like reassuring.
no, for sure. And I think it's getting to a different audience because you're used to the same typical audience, right? Of your kids, your generation, and younger. But I think now people are getting to know who you are a little bit as well, which is cool. Mm-hmm. So today, what do you want to start with and dive into?
Well, we wanted this episode to be about contest prep, right?
Yes.
And I think when we wanted to the way I was picturing to structure this episode was we posted a poll online asking us questions. I thought we were going to choose a couple questions and have like big topics about it.
Okay.
But I'll be honest, the questions I got, I think were pretty shitty.
Why were they
I felt like they were just like typical gym bro questions that people think about prep.
Yes.
They weren't competitors or people that have knowledge, like legit good, hard answering questions.
Okay.
I was like, oh shit, like I didn't even think about that when I get put in that situation, you know? They were like just simple shit questions.
Oh.
So, I honestly think the best thing to do would be going down your list, going down mine, going back and forth with each other.
Sure.
And then when we find a good topic, you just kind of roll with it.
Okay. We can start with that. So I think I got a good amount of questions, actually, that I think aren't... I had some corny questions. I'll call
there was a lot of
corny.
Well, that's a great word, corny. All right, I got mine up. So I'll start off. It's actually a good question for you.
Go ahead.
What's different for a natural competitor when you take them on as a coach?
My initial conversation is always the same.
Yeah.
I try to understand what it is they're looking for. You know, let's just assume, because this is a prep-related podcast at this point, they want to compete. I think the main thing is just kind of understanding, do they have enough muscle, right? Mm-hmm. And that's not to say if someone is enhanced, you can start with no muscle.
Yeah.
But if you just start and you don't even look the part at all, it's not like we can kind of use performance-enhancing drugs to hold the current muscle you have. So if someone doesn't have enough muscle at all and they're natural, which most of the time is the case for anyone under 25 years of age, if they're natural, it's very hard. It's just more being realistic with their timeline, right? So if they come to me saying, oh, I just did a mini cut, like I want to do a show, well, you've already been in a deficit and you're doing all this cardio, your food's really low, and you don't have a lot of muscle. Yeah. So what's the point of what do you expect to get out of competing? Do you want to get first call out? Are you looking to get your pro card? Then a lot of people now, for whatever reason, they want to compete in the NPC. So like I always look at that as, if you're competing in the NPC and you're natural, you're kind of going into war, a gunfight with a sword.
Yeah.
Can you do okay? Yeah, absolutely. You can beat some people, for sure, as we've seen it multiple times with some of my competitors and other competitors in the industry. But ultimately, you're definitely at a disadvantage, for sure. So to me, stick to your own federation.
Yeah.
When you're younger, too, get your feet wet, understand, hey, is prep for me? Do I really like doing this? And then be realistic with yourself. So I think that's how I try to assess people when they come to me at first.
Okay. So now, I'm sure this question's in here as well, but to go off with this, is it harder for a natural person to prep to like get shredded and conditioned compared to an enhanced person? because the enhanced person has all the extra drugs to help them, or is it harder with those extra variables?
So I think it's definitely easier for an enhanced person to get in shape.
Okay.
Because again, you have those tools in reserve, right? So you can pull out different fat burners where I don't have to really touch. I don't have to increase cardio. I don't have to decrease food. I have a fat burner now that's kind of enhancing things. For some people that are, go the thyroid medication route, but, I don't really like to use that as much, but that's a whole nother realm that's very popular now.
Yeah.
To where people are using that. So that's another reason people get in shape. You don't even have to pay attention to nutrition if you're going that route. Someone natural, on the other hand, if they're at 15% body fat, you need to give yourself ample amount of time. Every week, you have to see progress. You don't have time to wait and say, okay, I have a fat burner coming in at 6 weeks out. I have these cutters coming in.
Yeah.
You kind of have to have as much linear progress as possible.
Cool.
Let's see here. We're going to start from the bottom up because that was like the first questions.
Okay.
Here's a question for you, actually.
Me?
Yeah, so I guess we can get into the topic of reversing. But we'll start with, how easy is it to post-show binge, and have you?
Sure. Yeah, so I've had experience with this a couple times, as you're aware. It's very easy to fall in a binge. And what was the other part of the question? Have I done it? Yes. And it's easy. Yeah, I've done it twice. It's super easy to fall into because you hear all the time, right? You're prepping for 12 weeks, 16 weeks for this one day. That day has come. You either won or you lost. You're either in a good headspace or not. You're either now going to celebrate and eat food. And think about it, food's addicting. You get so much dopamine. We had no dopamine in prep. That's another thing. You end up prep, you get no dopamine. Right. So when you have that day, you win or you lose. You go to food, you get all this dopamine rush, and it can either hit you like a brick, where you just fall under that trap and you go back to food. You don't want to go back on a diet. And that's what happened to me. And that's why I fell under 25 pounds in 3 days. And nowadays, I think social media ruins it for people too, because it's so common for people to post cheesecakes, crazy foods. So everyone thinks, oh yeah, post-show, I have to eat this type of food. But I can guarantee there was no social media and everyone did bodybuilding still, we wouldn't be just seeing these crazy foods like pancakes with ice cream and marshmallows and everything on it, you know?
I think the quote-unquote cool thing to do is be able to have a really lean physique, where you look like that action figure, and then you can eat really crappy.
Like those photos of a shredded person going like this with a big burger or pancakes or whatever it is. Yeah,
that's the cool thing. But the reality is, can you do that for a meal? Sure, but 95% of people, if you're doing that day in and day out, days after the show especially, you're just going to put yourself in such a bad spot. You know, not only will your health markers get impaired, but you're really just coming out of a show, insulin sensitivity is at its highest, right?
Yep.
You can make a lot of good progress, or you can make a lot of detrimental.
So Christian Guzman just did a show. He gained 35 pounds in 11 days.
I just actually saw that this morning.
But still, around 30 pounds. He's done it for his last couple shows. I think he just doesn't. I mean, the man has got a lot of stressors in his life, right? He runs a couple businesses, I understand. But for himself, he wants to be an IFBB pro as one of his goals in the next 10 years. If he utilized his reverse well, he could grow a lot of muscle. That's what I did last year. Yeah. And what I did was, we enjoyed a day or two of eating food, right? We went out to breakfast. We then had a pizza night.
Yep.
And then after that, I remember feeling my stomach aching. You feel disgusting. Your bowel movements suck. And then after that, those 2 fun days, you got to go right back on track to a peak week type of diet for a day or two to get that water out. And it sucks, but it's a day or two. And you lose that weight, and then you can go back to a diet where you're 3 weeks out, and then you kind of just slowly implement it back in. Yeah. That's what we did, and it worked really well with me.
Yeah, I think a reverse is supposed to be, ultimately, I guess, to put it out there, I think a reverse is harder than the last few weeks of prep.
Yes.
Mentally, it's
mentally way harder.
Different world when you have different, maybe drugs in your system, or even someone that's natural, and you're fighting off some cravings depending on how your diet's set up, or just being, tired on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
But post-show, you remove that goal. You now have some goal that could be, who knows, 52 weeks away, if there's even a goal at all. And that temptation is more prominent than ever, especially if you had a taste of it. So let's just say you're a person that likes sweets or, the pancakes, the syrup, that kind of stuff. once you introduce that to your system, it takes a really strong-willed person to not fall victim to that every day thereafter.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important. So you want to just slowly titrate up food and realize, hey, like your initial maintenance, your calories, like a lot of people these days want to talk about like bro science and, you know, what's your maintenance and things like that. Are you in a deficit or surplus? When you're dieting weeks on ends, right?
Yeah.
A typical prep, at least 12 weeks, 16 to 20 ideally. Your new threshold is so much now more, it's in a lower
Yes,
point,
your maintenance
right? So
calories
if your
is
maintenance
lowers.
calories before was 2,400 and you've been dieting for 16 weeks,
Your body adapts, and then
your body's going to adapt. So if you go right back to that 2,400, you're going to get fat.
so we surplus,
shit
bigger surplus than you
fast.
think. Yeah.
So you got to go slow. So seeing Guzman do that, like, and especially someone who's had experience, doesn't make
Ooh.
much sense.
To go even deeper, I know you had some clients, I know too, that because they had such a bad reverse, they got a really bad gut health that put them in a really shitty situations years after, where they couldn't compete, they couldn't get into the shape they wanted to, or they don't look they're not building muscle, their body just isn't working as it used to. So why does that happen, Kyle? And you deal with that. So what do you have to do after that, right? After that person rebounded so bad, their gut health.
So when someone rebounds really poorly, I guess the first thing is being realistic with them and saying, hey, you this is not water, this is fat. Let's
Yeah.
come to the agreement that you've gotten fat.
And then before you get deeper, what is the time period where, let's say, I gained 25 pounds in 3 days?
Yeah.
How many more days until that 25 pounds turned into fat?
So things are not going to turn into fat, right? You're obviously holding a lot of water, but your sensitivity is so impaired. So if you continue to eat at that rate, what's going to happen, or what some people will see, is let's just say you're up those 25 pounds. Naturally, you're going to drop a little bit. You're not going to. 25 pounds is a lot.
Yeah.
You'll drop down a little bit, but you'll notice. Say, let's just use 200 pounds as like just a quantitative number here.
Yeah.
Week after week, you might say 200 pounds, and it's just going to get worse,
Softer
and
softer
worse
and softer.
and worse. And you're going to look in the mirror. Oh, I didn't do anything wrong. And the fact of the matter is, you did everything wrong, because that first week, that second week, that third week, your calories were just entirely too high. And not even from a food perspective, right? You have to also consider, if this person was enhanced, as you asked in the beginning, you have a lot of calories that are being burned from those enhancements being in. So you have different fat burners that are in, different cutting type drugs like a Tren or something like that. Remove all of those. And then remove cardio, you've already raised your normal caloric intake without even increasing food.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that most people don't consider, unfortunately. Then they get into the point where, yes, they are now fat. It's
Okay.
not going to come off because their body's not capable of losing that body fat. It's not healthy enough. Factor in, like you had mentioned, bacteria overgrowth and things like that. Eating the wrong foods that are creating inflammation and stress on your body, because now you got to also think someone's going to go from being shredded 3 weeks later, maybe they were binging and now they're not liking how they look. Now mentally they're stressed, right? So now they're not even sleeping. They're in the gym trying to kill themselves, doing extra cardio, going back into this deficit that they were already in for 20 weeks.
Yeah.
It's just so much stress. And now it's just, with the inflammation in the gut, it's like a perfect recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what's going to happen. And you can't fix it. You can only just acknowledge, okay, this is where I am. What can I do? I can't undo things I've done. And that's the problem.
That's
You'll
so
see it with a lot of
crazy,
people.
Because with the situation we just laid out, right? Like, if anyone heard this and they were right about to do a reverse, they'd 100% follow the diet. But it just takes a lot of discipline. Because there's so much like negative things.
Following reverse is really hard. I rarely see, of all the people I've ever coached, maybe 25, 30% like truly can nail it.
Yeah, it took me a couple tries.
And exactly. And you weren't perfect, but you get better and better. You learn. And it becomes also like, how bad do you want to actually improve, right? So, hopefully Christian improves the way he's eating, going about it. But
see, like, a lot of the questions I got are questions to me that weren't deep, but to like the viewer, the average viewer that never did a competition prep, is actually pretty good. So
yeah.
I'll hit him with it. What is your sleep the further into prep you get?
Say that again?
How is your sleep the further into prep you get?
I think the more in a deficit you go, the leaner you get, the harder it is to get sleep.
Yeah.
So factor in, your mind's going to be racing as you get closer to your goal. Are you behind? Are you on schedule?
Yep.
You have that facet. And then you factor in social media.
Yep.
Maybe you're competing against someone that's really popular, or perhaps there's a lot of pressure on you. Now you're stressed out, so you're not even being able to go to sleep. So not only do you not have probably good habits, we can talk about that at another point, and developing good habits to get into a better environment to get to sleep and have quality sleep. But ultimately, as you're in prep, sleep is going to become something that is more important than ever.
Yeah.
Even outside is very important, but in prep, especially for burning fat and improving on a day-to-day basis, a week-to-week basis, sleep is essential. Trust me, and like me, myself, as you know, I've tried everything to combat not sleeping. But ultimately, sleep is like king. Just like rest, sometimes people have to just do less is more. Take a weekend off instead of pushing harder. All of a sudden they drop weight. All of a sudden they look better.
Yeah.
It's no surprise. It's just resting the body. But that's where you'll implement different supplements, to really just help kind of get into a deeper sleep. And again, having those good habits, I think, and practicing them and really instilling them will allow you to have a successful prep.
Sleep is the hardest part of prep for me. So I'm sure there's another question in here.
Yeah.
But when we get closer to show day, my mind races every single night before I go to bed. And it's good right now in the off season, but when I'm deep in prep, it races so much that I paranoid myself. Am I going to fall asleep? Am I going to fall asleep? And I'll stay up for like 2 hours. I remember one prep, I stared at my ceiling for 4 hours. Didn't touch my phone because I knew if I touched my phone, it'd keep me up more. So it's rough.
So you, at least from your personal experience,
Yep.
why was it hard to sleep?
Trend.
It was more drug related,
Yeah.
probably, right? And I think a lot of
Because
people
when I did preps without that, I'd be able to sleep okay.
Yeah.
But then I found something to combat that, which was smoking before I go to bed. So that's why
I think that's why
prep I'll smoke.
There's another question on here. They're like
Yep.
specific drugs that you need to use for enhanced bodybuilders in a prep. There's the common favorites, right? You have your Masteron, your Winstrol, things like that.
Yep.
But the most important ones, such as the guests we had, right? The Tren twins, Tren itself.
Yeah.
Is it needed? I don't think it's needed.
Not needed, no.
Right? For some people, will it help? Absolutely. It's going to help. But if it comes with a plethora of side effects. So if you can't sleep, I don't care what you're taking. I prefer someone to sleep all 10 times out of 10. It's not even like maybe this person can't sleep that well. That's okay. It's if you can sleep better and now you can't sleep, I don't care. Don't use it. You know?
Yeah.
It's a question that kind of ties in. So this person asked, what would you say is the hardest weeks of prep, the pros and cons? So I guess let's just take someone through a typical, phasing in another question as well, not to get into too many different topics.
The
but
phases of prep type of thing?
Yeah, well, so we'll talk about the harder parts of prep, why they might be harder from your personal experience. I can speak on it too. But also the length of prep. Sometimes people will ask as a question. So I personally first-time competitor,
Yeah.
at least 4 months. So 16 weeks, ideally. 20 weeks in a perfect world. That would be really a great timeline, assuming someone is in decent composition, right? Going into prep, this is not a fat loss journey. This is not America's Biggest Loser. It's bodybuilding, right? Mm-hmm. So we want to make sure that we are starting in a position where this makes sense to actually achieve the level of body fat we want
Yep.
over this time period. Now, can some people get in shape very fast? Yes, they can. Does that mean they should only spend 6 weeks in prep? No, I don't think so, right? And Jesse, our previous guest, the first time I helped him last year, I think he gave me 3 weeks. Okay, 3 weeks. He looked pretty good, but comparable to this previous time around where he won his class, he was way leaner. Still natural. Still had a mediocre off season, if we want to call it that. But he gave me more time. We had about 7 weeks, so we had about 2 to 2.5 times the length, okay?
Yeah.
And he got in really good shape.
Yeah.
Now, we can only imagine if he gave me 12 weeks, but that's another story. So going back to this question here, looking at, let's just say a prep starts at 16 weeks out.
Yep.
As you go through that, take us through what's the hardest weeks? Why are they the hardest weeks? What's the easiest weeks?
So I feel like it depends on the situation where you enter prep, because obviously the end's hard, but sometimes the beginning is hard as well. If you didn't really have a diet plan in the off season and immediately went into a diet, that could be hard in the initial start of prep, because number one, are you going to have mental games with yourself following the diet? Number two, I've always struggled because you always up my calories in the beginning. This way we can, start with a higher baseline of food. I would always struggle getting that food down in the beginning. I don't think this year we're having an issue because I've been on my off-season diet this whole time.
Right.
And we know where to go, because this diet will just continue until we hit our prep 20 weeks out. We'll be like, all right, we're still here. And then eventually we taper down, whatever it is, But initially for me, it used to be the beginning because I wasn't good at getting the food down. And then I'd say the last month of prep is when it starts getting hard. It's nothing about the diet, kind of. It's more about there's nothing nothing that gives you dopamine in life when you're in prep and you're that deep. I can't even watch a movie with my attention span. I can't enjoy anything. So I would just exist, walk, and look at things. So that's what the hardest part is for me. Like you literally, you're counting the clock. Yes.
To your next meal, next workout.
Next meal,
like
next workout for the next day, next sleep, till show day.
Yeah, and I think, I guess speaking from my personal experience, I've started preps to where I wasn't in the best of shape, so starting out the gate really hard.
Yep.
Can be a shock, right? So I always felt the easiest parts of prep, probably like week 6 to 10, somewhere in there. You're feeling pretty good. Food's kind of high. You might, if you're enhanced, you start to take different drugs at the time that are going to kind of cosmetically start changing things weekly. Yeah. But typically at that point, if you're on track, how you should look for a show 8 weeks out, it's not hard to get to. Even like a 4-week outlook, in my opinion, for most people, it's not hard to get to, right? And looking back, usually, especially as you get through those last 4 weeks, which when you're really trying to get in good shape, that can be challenging. If you do things on a day-to-day basis, right? So let's just take the average person that might be working at 9 to 5.
Yep.
And you're trying to prep. Now we're talking about, hey, a lot of the things you do, you have to make a lot of sacrifices. You're not going and doing any kind of other events, right? You're not playing soccer or basketball on the side.
Yeah.
On the weekends, you're not looking to really go to different stores. A lot of people start to get lazy. They start to park closer, right? So there's a whole other story as well. But I think the hardest part for me is just making sure mentally the person is locked in. So I think what most people probably struggle with is food, right? I think a lot of our focus nowadays is on having those cheat meals, or their free meals, as I prefer to call them. Removing that sometimes is a shock to some people, right? A lot of people wish they can keep a free meal in. And for some people, I do keep a free meal in as far as I can until I feel that, hey, this variable is now something I need to kind of control. But once you can accept that, okay, my goal right now, being food focused, is not going to get me to my goal. That's the biggest like driver mentally, I think. And for some people, that is what they probably consider hard. So when they're 4 to 6 weeks out, I'm just craving a burger. I'm craving this, whatever food they loved. Yeah. You're someone, again, I think what separates you from a lot of people is you're not food focused, right? I'm sure people that I've seen people prep weeks leading up to the show, those people that are posting food, hey, this is where I'm going after my show, or they're just randomly posting food all day long, those are the people that I know, hey, this person's going to have a hard time because all they're thinking about is food. And, after the show, I'm going to go here, here, and here. I'm going to offset my diet so I can fit this food in. And again, it's just setting themselves up for disaster. And sometimes, again, I can point out the landmines. They're going to step on them and they're going to learn, because the most valuable way to learn in life is sometimes by going through it yourself, as you did. The 25 pounds in 3 days, you didn't voluntarily say, hey, Kyle, I'm going to go off the rails and see what I can gain in 3 days.
I did not.
It just kind of happened. And then you look back like, damn, I probably made a couple poor decisions. There's a couple sandwiches I shouldn't have ate. There's a couple things that I wasn't really thinking clearly about. But I think that's the hardest part for most people, is just accepting that. And that could happen at any point in prep, depending if there's no free meal the whole time. But then inside 4 weeks, like I said, you're making sacrifices to where, could you go out and go to that social event or party? You could, but you probably should sleep. So making those sacrifices for some people are really hard. Any great bodybuilder, you have to be selfish, right? And everyone that's good, I think Ian just retired, this past week. He speaks on it. He had a really good support circle, right? So Melissa was able to really always be there, hand in hand with him, step by step, every step of the way. But without that, you remove her, I don't think Ian is as successful as he was. And I think a lot of good bodybuilders would be able to tell you that, because it takes a selfish person to be good at bodybuilding. You don't care about what anybody else is doing. You care about what you're doing, what time is your next meal, what time is your workout. And that's everything that matters down the stretch if you really want to be good at this.
Yeah, that's so crazy true. I just remember timing, like when I was on prep, like meeting you at the gym, like I was just so adamant about timing my way. Damn, that is crazy. Extremely selfish prep.
Question here. How annoying is it that everyone stole the road to pro from you, Anthony?
Have people? I don't know. I've only seen like 1 or 2.
I think a few people have. I don't know if it's more of an easy theme if you think about it. Like, that's not to knock you coming up with the series, but it's like that gives them a goal nowadays. People have road to this, road to the Olympia.
Yeah. Well, it's whatever. I mean, it's like, listen, people know me as that. I have that series kind of like with my name, which is awesome. I didn't trademark it, so like fair game, but it's just kind of like a respect thing. Like, don't be a douche. Don't take this as well, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe like if you're also going for that goal, all right, just find another clever name, not Roto Pro, like something else.
Okay.
That's just my opinion on it.
All right.
Yeah.
Another question here that I think is important, actually.
Okay.
Do you think a coach is necessary in order to prep correctly?
Absolutely. Whenever I get asked, like at the Young Lady Block Party event, people ask me about bodybuilding advice, I always tell them to get a coach, because it's a second set of eyes that are knowledgeable, that have more experience than you typically. So whether you want to gain weight, like bulking, gain muscle, or cutting down, you're gonna get in your own head sometimes.
Yeah.
And you may not know how to cure some things. And yeah, coach is very important.
No, and I would agree. I mean, I think I always ask people, because I get this question pretty often. And I ask someone, who's your favorite athlete? So I'll ask you, who's my favorite athlete in the world, in any sport?
Messi.
Okay, Messi.
Sure, Messi.
Now, Messi plays for a team, right?
Yeah. Does he have a coach?
And that team has a coach, right?
Yes.
So I think every great athlete, whether it's a Kobe, a Messi, a Jordan, Derek Jeter,
Yep.
they all have coaches, not because they quote-unquote need the coach. It's more so, hey, this person's going to call the shots, so perhaps if for some reason you're contemplating, should I do this or should I do that, you're given an order and you just do it. You execute.
True.
And in that way, at the end of the day, perhaps maybe that was the wrong decision, right? We find out, oh, we probably should have did something different, but it took away that guessing. And sometimes you, especially for mental purposes when it comes to bodybuilding, if you start, I get people that always ask, hey, this is what my coach has me doing. What do you think? Don't ask me that, guys. Like, no, because I don't want to ever get in your head. I'm sure your coach has a reason to give you whatever. There's 10 ways to skin a cat. As long as you ask those questions and you feel confident, that's how it should be. And the same thing when you're playing soccer. I never personally played soccer, so I don't want to speak, but I'll speak to like, I don't know, basketball or something, right? If there's a play that's called or a certain strategy that's going to be set forth on defense on the next, next time we step on the court after the timeout or something, I don't have to think, because those seconds can be costly. And now I'm thinking about, oh, what should I do, instead of, this is what I'm doing. I'm just going to do it the way I know how to do it, the way I practiced it, right?
That was good. Great analogy. You had a couple there. Skin the cat and the whatever that one was. Sorry, I'll hit you with one. All right, so this one, I'm going to reword this question. The original question is, emotionally, what's the hardest thing about prep? Which I guess we could answer. But I want to ask you, emotionally as a coach, what's the hardest thing about prep with your clients?
It's a great question. I think emotionally, if I feel more invested in the person, that's really bothersome, to be honest, right? So someone says, hey, this is what I want. That's just the cliche, oh, I want to turn pro. Let's forget that for a second, because that's unrealistic. But if someone wants to do really well, some people just want to prep. Hey, I was always fat growing up. I just want to step on stage. Cool. Hey, I want to win. Well, okay, you're going to prep when I say you can prep. And number two, when we do prep, don't ask me, oh, bro, can I have a burger? Or are you sure this is what I should do? If I wasn't sure, I wouldn't give it to you, number one. And number two, again, if you're focused on food, you're in the wrong place. Like, please leave me alone,
you're not
right?
To win, yeah.
So, like, I care about what that person's goal is. And they're not the most comfortable chairs.
Yeah, we keep hitting feet.
But ultimately, again, I think it's just important to assess what the person's goal is. Mm-hmm. If I'm on the same page with someone, I know at the end of the day, there's tons of coaches now in this fitness space. Mm-hmm. Where I try to set myself apart is, hey, Anthony, what is your goal? Cool, I understand what your goal is. This is how I think we should get there. I need your feedback along the way. That way I can help kind of guide you. Ultimately, I can't do the cardio for you. I can't prep for you. I wish I could. I have some genetic freaks that absolutely suck at following diets. I wish I could do everything for them, because I know, hey, give me that body. I'll show you what it's supposed to look like. But that's the hardest part. Sometimes, like, I can't go in your shoes, right?
I mean, listen, I do my cardio, but damn, if you don't do your cardio, like, if you're lazy, that's crazy. If you're lazy, that's crazy.
Listen, so that ties into another question on here. I don't want to misword it. This person wrote it somewhere on here, but they had asked, I'm sure you see it too, why is it that some people can go through prep not doing any cardio, and some people need a fuck ton?
lucky genetics. That's
And speak from your experience. So far in your
prep,
5 preps,
something like that.
how's cardio been?
The most we've ever done is like 45 minutes.
And how does that look compared to the least cardio you've ever done?
The least? I mean, let's use last prep. I think last prep, the most we got up to was 35 minutes. So it really just stands with where'd you start? How good is your, I guess, metabolism at the time? But yeah, like I don't do much cardio, but then I hear some of your clients doing like 45 in the morning and like 30 post workout.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it depends on the person.
Yeah,
right?
it's simple. It's genetics.
At the end of the day, could you you learn from yourself? Could you just say, hey, Kyle, like this prep, I want to do 2 hours of cardio. I want to see what I look like doing that. How much higher I can keep food. You know, maybe I train not as hard. There's different ways to go about it.
Yeah.
But ultimately, when people ask me that question, you do as much cardio as I think you need, right?
Wait.
So it's like, go ahead.
So I remember, wasn't that a question James asked? Didn't he ask? No, he asked for, he didn't want to do cardio, so he asked for less food, right?
Yes.
It was the opposite. Has someone ever asked you for more food with more cardio?
Kind of, right? It would be more of, hey, I noticed this person doesn't do much cardio at all. Why is that they're able to eat this much? Like, I know how they were a year ago. And the answer there is, hey, they have some T3 in their body now, synthetic, thyroid medication being applied here. So at the end of the day, their body's processing at 10 times the efficiency. So of course they can eat more food and not do as much. But for most people, right, other than heart health purposes, which is super important, we just had another person take their life, unfortunately,
Yeah.
but I'm sure it was somewhat related to bodybuilding.
Uh-huh.
Heart health is important, man, right? Making sure we're getting our health checked, our markers checked. Doing cardio is good for you. I don't know what became so cool about, hey, I don't have to do cardio to be shredded. Like, good for you, but when we have to run somewhere, you're going to die first because you can't last. You have no endurance.
I was going to mention a name, but when you just said you're going to die first, it's fucked up.
Oh, no, don't mention names of die first, but in actuality, like I said, if you have to run right now,
Yeah.
like, let's just say Godzilla comes here, okay? We have to run.
Yeah.
If you don't do any cardio, I don't care how hard you train,
You're fucked, yeah.
you're not lasting, man. You're done. You're going to be winded and you're going to be eaten. That's it.
Isn't that, yeah. So now I have a question kind of following up on this with my own question to you, Kyle. So if someone's having more activity output, right, cardio, gym, and more food, aren't they like a more efficient machine and like, right?
You could say their body is more primed in a way.
Okay. So then like what would be a better look of like fullness and bodybuilding? Would it be more cardio, more food, or less cardio, less food?
I think in a perfect world,
Yeah.
you always want to try to be ready. I always tell people, if you can be ready 2 weeks out, that's a great spot because then you can reduce allostatic load, right? So the more, what you might not perceive as stress doesn't mean it's not stressful. So when you're in a deficit, sprinkle in the trend, right? We'll talk about, and any kind of those harsh drugs, you're creating a lot of stress to your body. If you're not sleeping that well, tons of stress, right? So anytime we're doing cardio, even if it's just like low intensity, steady state, and you're still getting your heart rate up, and then factor in the weight training, that's a lot of stress on your body. So in a perfect world, right, we try to get out of that deficit, give your body food so that it can try to recover and reduce stress as much as possible, right? So that's why sometimes you don't see people doing a hard workout, right before stage. That last week is kind of just, kind of not going through the motions, but you're not going as hard as you were 8 weeks out, right? For inflammation purposes, for stress purposes, things like that. So to bring that best look, you want a rested physique. Therefore, being ready a little earlier will allow that to be the case.
Okay. Fair.
Let's see what we have here.
Oh, this is a question I'm going to kind of answer myself. And I guess you could answer too, but I don't really want to hear it from you.
Sure.
Can you get it up 3 to 4 weeks out?
Yeah, I mean, you should have no issues with erectile dysfunction. I suffer from that, in my opinion, 4 weeks out. Usually, again, it's an energy thing. If you're not eating and you're just a miserable person and you don't really want to prep and you're prepping for whatever reason you chose to, like anything in life, if you're a depressed person that's not even in prep, can have problems with ED, right?
Yeah.
They don't even take drugs. It's just they're depressed. Maybe they're not eating enough. So if you're malnourished, you're going to have problems. But factor in some drugs and stuff like that, I think 3 to 4 weeks out, you should still
You're really great.
be able to get it up. You might not be the most horny fella anymore.
Yeah. Dude, I had sex a day out.
That's a question on here, actually.
Really?
Yeah, it says,
That was a spark of love that night. That was crazy. It really was.
it says, do you prohibit, I don't want to say the person's name, whoever this is. Do you prohibit sexual relations in the lead up to show day? Do you think depletion regulates regardless?
Well, I actually think this was the first prep where I was able to have like intercourse, like religion, like a lot, right? Because I have a girlfriend. It helped me more because like I was looking forward to that, and it kind of made prep go by a little quicker, and I think it helped my mental. So I think it was a tool that helped.
No, so I think I've had a coach in the past that
Told you no?
it wrote out right on the peak week, no sex, right?
I will say, don't fighters not have sex before a fight because they gotta fight harder?
I can't speak to that.
I heard some of Jake Paul do that, but that is true. I feel like when you don't have sex for a little bit, you're kind of more like aggressive, more angry, and more like more sharp. You're definitely way sharp.
I just think at the end of the day, right, for some people, let's just say you live with a partner, all right? I'll say partner because the world we live in, we don't really know anymore. Perhaps there's a situation going on where you're not giving the person time because you're being selfish in prep. So that act of romance, we'll call it, is what is the make or break in terms of, hey, you're going to argue all night and not sleep. So for some people, if it reduces stress, I don't consider it to be a thing. In a perfect world, no, you sit to yourself, you're fucking selfish, you lock yourself in a box, and you prep. That's a perfect world.
So you'd say no sex?
I'm not going to say no because, again, if it reduces stress and it makes someone it's easier for them to sleep, awesome, you know? Some of these questions are silly. You have a question?
I have a question for you. How many different diet days do you follow? So it's kind of asking me this, but I've seen you do different plans with people. There's high-low days. You have certain training days, high food, lower food. Rest day is completely different. What makes you choose what type of diet goes with what person?
So it's a fair question. So I think the most basic thing is if you never followed anything at all and you follow a diet, whether it's a macro-based or not, if you're eating the same thing every single day, regardless if you train or not, for most people, right, I'd say 9 people out of 10, you're going to notice on days that you don't have as much output versus lower output, overall in the grand scheme of things over a month's time, I feel insulin sensitivity is going to be impaired a bit. So that's why I think it's important sometimes to realize, like, hey, you're training 5 days a week. Let's try to bump calories up a little bit to 5 days a week. Maybe the rest stays a little bit lower. Overall, if we're in a growing phase, calories need to still be up across the board. But then there's times in which for some people, depending on their body type, I have a fattier body type, right? So for me, if I'm slamming food on my rest day, specifically carbohydrates, I become a watery mess. So psychologically, now I don't like how I look, so I'm not going to perform as well. But then from a physique standpoint, I'm not someone that does well with those carbohydrates. So for me, I always benefited from having a training day and a training day diet and an off day diet. Let's take that a step further, right? Again, if we're in a growing phase, we're in reverse. Take someone like me who gets very watery if I'm having carbohydrates every single meal, right? We don't have to get into the science behind it of what carbohydrates do and how the pancreas and all that works. But what's the most important is to realize I need food to grow. I need calories to be higher. Mm-hmm. However, I can't obviously get them all from carbohydrates because then it's impairing my markers here. So that's going to cut off my ceiling in terms of how far I can go staying lean and growing and being efficient. So using a different macronutrient source, like a higher fats, for example, allows me to say, okay, I can still keep food higher. So maybe my training day A and my training day B are the same calories. One has 200 grams of fat or 200 grams of carbs, right? One has 400. And the difference isn't from protein, it's from fats.
Yep.
So I think it really just depends on the person. But ultimately, you know, I have conversations all the time. Some people are really they love eating carbs. They feel great. And I'll challenge them sometimes to where I'll say, hey, like, let's reduce these. Let's just put fats in. Oh, I'm so much fuller, Kyle. I feel so much better. Again, considering inflammation and things like that, that requires a specific need to where the diet isn't the same every day because perhaps you're eating something that's creating inflammation. Your gut's distended. So now that's going to impede digestion. So it doesn't matter what you're eating because you're eating the wrong foods. So therefore, we need to have a different diet.
I'm sorry I laughed in the middle of that. What's the shirt you're wearing?
Oh, it says undeniable.
It's like it looks like the Offspring's like merch shirt. Is it the Offspring? What is it?
No, it's my buddy Jaron.
Dude,
He made a company, Undeniable.
I thought you were like the Offspring, the band.
Yeah.
I thought you were wearing their merch shirts, and I was like,
No.
that's so strange.
No, it's not me.
Oh, actually, I have a question myself for you. Out of these, not in here. I saw Ross Flanagan post a story last night, and it says something like, "Have a full belly, can't go to sleep yet." Is that like something that people actually do? Like, you can't go to sleep, you have a full belly? Because I eat right before I go to bed.
It's not the best thing sometimes for digestion for some people.
Yep.
I'm not saying you have to go and walk.
Worst part about prep: dead tired, want to go to bed, but have a full ass belly. Now we wait.
So I think sometimes it's not ideal to just eat, scarf down food, and then go lay in bed.
That's what I do.
Just for digestion, motility purposes, all of these things.
Yep.
So therefore, I'm not saying you have to go on a walk, or I don't really prescribe that for many people to say, hey, you have to walk 15 minutes after the meal. But it makes sense to kind of give your body some time to digest. Again, practice good habits to be able to sleep better.
Yep.
I wouldn't say eating a big-ass meal and then laying down is going to do the best for you, especially depending on what it's comprised of. If you're eating a lot of sugar and honey and all these things, you're not going to go right to sleep. You're definitely going to get a spike of energy.
Well, my last meal is beef, 50 grams of carbs of rice, and then 150 grams of pineapple, and I went right to bed.
That's a baby meal.
Yeah, no, it is. You gotta up my food soon.
Let's see.
Wow, a lot of sex questions. This is insane.
All right, these are questions that I think are important for people that perhaps that are coaching other people, or maybe they're doing things themselves, but it's in regards to sweeteners. So this first one is, do you use gum to make your cravings go away or anything else? So have you used anything?
For sure. I thought about this the other day too. Me, my first prep, I utilized gum a lot. If I wanted to taste something, I just used gum. I wouldn't eat a whole pack a day. Maybe I'd have 3 pieces at most for like the fresh flavor. Because remember, I was in high school, so I'd have one in school that lasted me the whole day of school. I'd come home, eat. I'd have one in the gym. Maybe I had that's 2 pieces I knew I had. Maybe third one somewhere else, but like, yeah, it would just help me. I'd chew and get my. I thought my jawline was improving by chewing gum, so that was making me happy as I was getting leaner. Was improving my jawline and getting the satisfaction of the sweetness. So yeah, I mean, fuck it, it's gum.
So I think I'm looking for this other question regarding sweeteners. But as I look, I'll try to multitask here. So I think that's fine to chew a little bit of gum.
Yeah,
but again, I specify.
Extreme.
Oh my God, yeah, they chew a pack of gum a day.
And then you had, I'm not going to say names here, but we had people that use sweeteners excessively.
Right, so starting with the gum, I don't care if it's sugar-free or not, guys. Like, if you chew a pack of gum a day,
that's stupid.
Remove the pack of gum and tell me you don't get better in 2 days, right? Now we'll go into sweeteners. I can't find a specific question, but in terms of sweeteners, there's a question regarding, I know who it was from specifically, and it had asked, at what point in prep do you remove sweeteners and things like protein powder? So, I guess speaking to that, right? One of the most important things, I guess, coaching and looking at anyone, right, as I see pictures or I ask for feedback, is how are you digesting everything? Oftentimes, in this day and age, we have these crazy sauces and sweeteners. Things like Weldon Farms.
Oh my, I forgot about that company, yeah.
Weldon Farms, girls love their Weldon Farms. And I can't tell you, I have so many cases I can point to and anecdotal evidence to show, hey, when you remove this Weldon Farms syrup, you physically are lower in body weight and you aesthetically just look way better. There's no film of water on you anymore. So obviously, something in your body is not reacting very well. So though it tastes okay, it's not doing a good job. So something like that, I don't even tell, Weldon Farms is out, like 3 months out of a show. Like, don't use that shit. I don't think you should ever use that shit. Sorry for Weldon Farms.
I remember seeing that in my first prep, and that's when I liked Weldon Farms. I was like, damn, this guy's a hater. But no, it's smart, makes sense.
Right. And then there's other sauces out there. So at what point in prep, as we're going through prep, we want to control the most variables inside 2 weeks especially, because everything matters at that point. The water you're intaking, the types of meals you're having. At that point, hopefully, you are so regimented that you know, hey, I do better with a sweet potato with this meal. I do better with rice in this meal, fruit, etc. You know exactly what's working for your body. 2 weeks out, all that excess, maybe there's diet beverages, energy drinks, which are really popular now. I try to remove all of those because, again, there's a chance when you're that lean, or maybe even palm oil and Rice Krispies. I've always used Rice Krispies, right, leading into shows and things like that. And it was pointed out to me that for some people, when they're super lean, they have an allergic reaction to palm oil, but it's not like to where you get hives or something crazy, but it just puts a little bit of a film of water on your body. So something like that, I just, again, I keep out. I just remove it. Inside 2 weeks, I don't want any kind of additives like that at all. Factor in now protein powder, which is a popular meal for most people. You've made also popular yourself, is like the cream of rice with the protein powder. A really tasty meal. There's great proteins out there. So let's just assume it's still a clean meal. Not many sweeteners in it. There's no allergies present to where when you're eating it, it's doing something for your physique. The reason I take it out usually is because most people toward the end of prep should be hungry. And if you're hungry, eat whole food. Drinking a shake versus eating chicken breast, cod if you're eating, or mahi-mahi, whatever you're eating, is totally different.
Yes.
And I'm not saying it's preferred. Sometimes people love their shakes. But again, I think it's a big difference in terms of keeping you more satiated if you're eating whole foods. So in a perfect world, I try to minimize protein powder. As soon as someone complains that they're hungry and I don't feel like I can't reduce calories more because I'm thinking of how they're going to be reacting, I say, okay, how many shakes you having today? 2? Let's remove the 2 shakes and let's put whole food in and then go from there.
Yeah. Now, this is a question I just have for you.
Yeah.
So I remember in some preps, you take pre-workout out and stuff like that. Is that for the sweeteners?
Yeah.
Okay. So I remember, I think my last prep I kept it in.
You kept it in until a couple days out.
So what?
A couple of days out.
Maybe I didn't do that. I don't think so.
I remember. You should have turned it out by the Monday.
I remember one prep. You told me to take creatine out, and I was like, I didn't want to argue with you, so I just kept it in because creatine is intramuscular water. It's not.
Did it help?
So I kept it in.
But again, it's like when you're like, it's hard, right? In a perfect world, I would put myself at a 2 to 3 week outlook, and I would just run different experiments.
Yes.
But we can't do that. So the only thing I can do sometimes when I work with somebody, if I know it's no different from me, right? You're one of the few people, and when coaches have clients that literally follow everything, regardless of how much muscle they have or not, if they're lean enough, I look at those are like guinea pigs because like you can really learn a lot about them. So if I say, hey, remove the creatine and we see you drop 4 pounds and that's the only change we made, we know when this person takes creatine, this is the difference in the physique. It looks better, it looks worse. We understand.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's more of a foul-proof thing of like, hey, this kind of retains water. Let's remove it. I'm not worried about a fullness going into the show. I'm more worried about being dry, things like that. This is a question for you. Is there the question's worded, but I'm going to reword it. How it's worded is there a better split to do while on prep, or should you stick with the same routine? But I'm going to reword it to, how does your lifting change when you're in prep versus like in off season?
I have the same question here. How does your training change from off prep to in prep? So basically, it's a great question. Previously, like my past trainings in prep, I can't really answer that because I would just do whatever workouts I wanted to and wouldn't really think too much about my training. It was just volume based. But now going into my next show, I have a plan of attack because I kind of felt it and experienced it the last couple months. So what I've been doing right now is the Mike Menster way. It's high intensity, low volume. Right. I do one hard set, and I'm trying to do no more than 12, 15 reps. Okay. So I'm actually getting really strong right now. And what I've noticed is when I implement this low volume, it's a great look for me, like bulked up. I notice I'm stronger. I look full, but it's like nothing crazy. It's like a nice solid muscle. And then when I start to volumize my training by doing drop sets or intensifiers, my muscles do get rounder.
Yes.
And I was never able to fully see that until the last couple months right when you tore your tricep, I started training by myself. Right. I started doing my drop sets and stuff that we were never doing when me and you were training. Yeah. And my muscles got bubblier, and I like that look.
I think like our goal again was, hey, we're trying to put on as much muscle as possible. Yeah. Right. So if we could take what you used to lift for 6 reps and you can lift it for 12, that's the goal. And we were able to do that. So now when you're going back to the more volume, mystic is not a word, more volume-based training. Did you just really smile for a picture? So now that you're going to more of a volume-based training, you're using weights that you used to lift at your peak, like, max strength ranges. So, 4 to 6 reps, you're now doing that for hypertrophy type training. So I think that's definitely the difference. But I guess the fallacy out there is always, think back to the bodybuilding.com, or you're probably younger, to bulk or cut, should you do more reps?
Yeah.
And that's not always the case, right? So I think you establish your base doing certain exercises, certain rep ranges. Once you find what works for you, and I encourage people to experiment, not necessarily in a prep, but whatever you're doing that's working, you stick to it. You built a base doing certain exercises, you built a base doing certain workouts, you stick to them. Now, as prep goes on, a lot of people sometimes, again, factor in what I talked about earlier, stress being higher, not just because of lower food, more cardio, etc., but maybe drug-induced, lower levels of body fat. A lot of people are always, I need to do more. That's where people start to run into like a wall.
Yeah.
I don't need you to do more. I saw someone that the other day. That I have a lot of military clients, whether they're currently serving or out of the Navy, was the specific one. I tell them, I don't need you to do more. I just need you to do what you've been doing. Because they're always like, what else can I do? Like, slow down.
Relax.
Right? Relax. Do what you've been doing because it's been working. And for most times, I've noticed, I have another client, if I show you, he's 3 weeks out from a pro show. He looks fantastic. You'll see him, you'll be like, wow, this kid's really good. He's actually backed off because he noticed his weight's going up. And there's another case I know where, again, even myself, as I told you, if I train 4 or 5 days in a row hard, I always get sick, right? Aside from getting sick, inflammation is higher. If you were to go train right now and do leg training, right, and you did 30, 40 sets, I promise you tomorrow your weight's going to be up. Doesn't mean you gained muscle. All it means is you're probably inflamed, right?
Yeah.
So you don't have to necessarily do anything different when it comes to prep training. Keep doing what you're doing and be aware of how much stress you're inducing in your body, especially as prep goes on. Yeah? All right.
I didn't think I get to fully finish, but so with my plan of attack for my prep, right? I would like to continue with this lower volume up until about, I think, 8 weeks out. Because what I noticed, I did for about 2 months with this higher volume, and after that, I started not responding as good. So I think it only lasts for a little bit of time, and I would like to do that for about my last 8 weeks of prep.
In a perfect world, that makes sense. You see any good questions asked?
I'm trying to find a good question. Oh, did you ask me something?
No. So you can read as you're reading. So another question, there's like 5 of them now. What do I think about macros for prep?
Okay.
I hate them.
Stupid. That's stupid.
I think it's really stupid. An advanced person, let's just say it's a person that's not got to be a pro, but you're experienced. If you know what's good for your body and what foods digest well, then I can presume if I write, hey, you're at the point now, if I tell you 50 grams of carbs, you know where to get 50 grams of carbs from. You're not going to go pull it from, I don't know,
M&Ms.
Pop-Tarts or M&Ms.
Something stupid, yeah. Kyle.
Yeah.
I don't think, okay, I'm not even going to say anything. Did anything go wrong with our previous prep together?
Your last prep?
Yeah.
No, I would say the only thing I think last prep, I guess I would point to a training perspective. I don't think there's anything wrong with your look other than the fact that we should have just changed your pose. Yeah. And I think had you changed that pose literally during pre-stretching, you would have gotten your pro card.
Happy I didn't, though.
Sure, because we didn't want second place anyway, right?
Yep.
But ultimately, I think it's just more of from a training perspective. Now that you're learning, I feel like you're equipped well with knowledge. You know how to train.
Yeah.
Much better than you did a year ago. Way better than you did 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
As we go deeper into prep now, right, I don't have to monitor you and say, hey, are you doing what you're supposed to do? If anything, I think I'm going to have to tell you, hey, man, like, let's back down a little bit. Like, take an exercise away. Okay. Less working sets. So I think that would be the only thing going back differently. I would try to have monitored that more to pay attention to exactly how much volume you're doing. Let's kind of cut it down. But again, I think that comes with experience in terms of you're taking an official off season. I think anybody who really puts the time they put into a prep into just one off season, they look substantially different. And it's not a drug thing. It's not anything other than the fact that, hey, for 16 weeks of your prep, I asked you all the time, in your prep, I don't know if it was officially, 14 weeks last time? I think it was like a weird number. Yeah.
I think it was 14 weeks.
Yeah, I think it was 14 weeks. It's like a weird number. If I asked you how many meals you missed, 0.
None.
You didn't miss. And a lot of people are pretty good with that. Not a lot of people. 80%, okay? We'll say, hey, I missed 0 or I missed 1.
Yeah.
And then 1 week into the off season,
how many did you miss? It was a couple.
it's like 5 or 6, and it's just like, okay, you're 6,000% worse than you just were.
Yeah.
What do you expect? So put that effort in the off season, learn, and then when it comes time to prep, you just put yourself in such a better place.
Yeah, bro, I'm gonna look crazy next year. I say with confidence, I'm excited. Ooh. All right, this is a question for both of us.
Yeah.
What's the best thing that Kyle does as a coach for you, Ant, and vice versa?
Okay.
So, if you know yours, go for it. I gotta think of mine. I'm gonna explain mine actually first. So I'm gonna go first. So the best thing you do for me, I feel like it's kind of hard for me to answer this because there's nothing that like stands out. That like Kyle is my emotional support system. Like he's my therapist. Like maybe you are that, but with the relationship we have,
Maybe you say, huh?
yeah, maybe.
Maybe.
Because I don't think I go to you for therapy, but like we're just such good friends. Whenever we prep,
Right.
we would FaceTime at nighttime and just talk, which you kept me company, you kept me sane.
Right.
So that was great. But like you were my only bodybuilding coach, so like this is all I know, and I'm aware of some other people and stuff. But like, you know, you're my you're like my first guy, right? First one. Fuck. I'm trying to say is like I don't know any other coach.
Yeah.
So like everything is just like, all right, you're a coach. This is everything I expect, everything I know.
Right.
And like there's nothing extraordinary that you do differently from me or that you've done. You're just a standard coach to me.
Just a standard coach to you.
That's a good friend too.
Yeah, so I think for some people,
I butchered that. I mean good in that.
yeah, that was pretty. I wasn't as bad as Mikey's compliment about himself, but yeah, I mean, you got to factor in the fact that remove the friend card for a second, right? 99% of clients and coaches don't know much about themselves other than, hey, this is your diet. Did you do what you're supposed to do? Okay. So I think factor in that the support that I give you just from being a friend.
Yeah.
That obviously makes things different. But then also, you don't have experience with another coach, right? And for some people, they have experience with another coach, and all I can say is that coach isn't me. The coach is a different style, and perhaps they don't care, or they don't have the knowledge. And I think that's where it's different for sure. To where at least I try to. I always tell people, right? At the Young LA Bach party, there were a couple guys there that are good. They have good physiques. They've done well. One of them is a pro, and he's inquired multiple times about working together, right? At the same time, I always tell him, like, you just won your pro card with your coach.
Why leave?
Why leave? Like, what wasn't good enough, right? And again, sometimes there's cases where they happen to get the pro card because they didn't listen to the coach. But in this case, they did listen to the coach. They might not have been happy, but at the same time, give that person a chance to communicate. So this ties into what do you do that's best for me is, generally speaking, if I ask you to do something, whether you want to or not, you do it. You don't really bitch too much to me, or at least I ignore it if you do. But you give me the feedback. When I ask you something, you're able to be pretty in tune with, hey, this is how I'm feeling. The last time I felt, because we have data together now, we've been doing this a few times, it's very easy for me to pick up and say, okay, I remember when we were doing this prep, this is what happened.
Yeah.
These symptoms that you're telling me, what you're experiencing, we know what happened last time if we ignored these. So when you give me that right biofeedback and you don't just send over pictures and weight, that's the difference, right? So I don't understand anybody out there that works with somebody, whether you're a lifestyle client or not. If you just send over pictures and weight, what the fuck is that? Right? Things could look, okay, you're looking better in the mirror, but I don't know, are you ass blasting the toilet? Are you forgetting things? Are you a miserable human to be around? I don't know those things, right? And it's not to say I care, I guess, if I'm trying to get the best physique possible, but I do care because I want you to be able to be in the driver's seat of your life. I want you to be able to walk away from bodybuilding when you want to, and that's not popular nowadays, right? We see people sometimes not waking up tomorrow, and that's really shitty, man. So I think for you being young, one of the more attentive and inspirational guys of your generation, I think it's important that you try to lead by example and say, okay, this is what I'm choosing to do. No, it's not easy, but this is what I've learned. These are the mistakes I've made. And again, but we just go back to the reverse, right? When you gain the 25 pounds, you're not the only one who makes the mistake. Literally everyone. I've made the mistake. I don't remember the exact pounds because I didn't want to know. But Grant, wherever he is, he's made the mistake multiple times. So it's very common, but you live and learn through experiences. So I think when you give me that feedback, right, to answer the question, that's what makes it easier for me.
The feedback?
Yeah.
All right, so I can give you a better answer now.
Oh, no, we have a better answer.
Now that I heard your answer.
Okay,
yeah.
Go ahead.
So I think I struggled answering because it's not like, oh, Kyle holds my hand and gives me food that makes me comfortable when I ask for it, because that's not the reality of bodybuilding. You're a coach that is very knowledgeable, right? And you get the job done, and you've never failed me, right? Maybe we didn't win a show that we wanted to, but I wasn't ready myself in terms of size to fully compete and win that show. So there was never a situation that you brought me to a show and you failed my peak, you failed my conditioning. You've always got me ready for that stage. I've just failed myself to be fully ready in terms of size and maturity and that aspect of bodybuilding.
But I think it also falls on like about me being realistic, right? When you were 17, I didn't think you were going to go into nationals and win.
No.
I didn't know where you would fall. I was hoping you got better than third call-outs, right? So fourth call-outs, whatever it was. But I think, again, being realistic with someone is what's really important.
I mean, each show, literally every single show, our placings have improved. We never went backwards.
No, that's always the goal. If you're always getting anyone out there that's working with somebody, if you're getting better and better, again, the grass isn't always greener, and we all know that. This one is, what is the most overlooked aspect of health during prep? Do you know that answer?
I think it's going to be gut health. The most overlooked aspect of health going into prep.
I think in prep, or both of them, honestly.
I'd probably
during prep.
Probably say digestion or gut health.
So I would say that I put that as number one, and then not to repeat anything. So another more important factor is like blood pressure. I think blood pressure is like the silent killer, right? So you might not know you have high blood pressure until you get tested. You're like, oh, my blood pressure is high. But if you're sustaining high blood pressure over time, that leads to an array of issues for sure, right? And that's unfortunately why we're seeing so many things nowadays, because high blood pressure is usually induced perhaps due to poor gut health, right, and poor digestion, a lot of inflammation in the body. And then when you're taking these PEDs, especially certain ones, your blood pressure is definitely through the roof. And you've noticed a couple of times, perhaps maybe you've eaten kind of shitty or anything you might have used once or twice, your blood pressure is high. I know, I can speak.
I have a story.
Go ahead.
So this past April, I went to go donate blood as a healthy bodybuilder should. And at the time, I was taking D-ball because I wanted to try it with you, right? We took D-ball.
Uh-huh.
And I remember I was like, I need to donate blood. I need to get my blood a little like less thinner. And I was nervous going in there because I was like, dude, my blood pressure is definitely so high. So I walk in there. They go check me out, see if my blood pressure's all right. The one nurse, just like, she checks it. She says nothing. She just walks out and grabs the manager. Now the manager's overseeing. She does it again. And then she just looks at it and goes like, yeah, it's the same reading. And the manager then puts on the stethoscope. Is that what it's called? I don't know. The thing. Pumps up my arm. And she's like, did you get into an accident or something before you got here? Like, anything happen? I was like, no. And she's like, your blood pressure's really high. And I was like, I get a little nervous before coming here. And then she's like, do you have to pee at all? Maybe you have to pee because sometimes when you hold pee, your blood pressure gets high. I'm like, yeah, I do. I go to the bathroom, I pee. Dude, I look at myself in the mirror. I'm like, you calm down. I like give myself some breathing techniques. I sat in there for a little bit. I did Wim Hof breathing. And then she checked it again and it dropped. And they're able to take my blood. But I think the mixture of the D-ball, obviously, and
no, for sure,
fucked up my blood
100%.
pressure.
But going into that day, had you not had been tested that day, would you have been worried that your blood pressure was high?
I'm a person that does so, yes, but the normal person, no.
They wouldn't know, right? I think that's the scary part, for sure. Trying to think, we have a few more good ones. I guess this is a question I can ask you. You've been through a couple preps now. What's been your toughest prep you've went through thus far, and why?
I think it was the one after the rebound we did.
And why was it harder?
Because I was in a shitty starting point, and I wanted to prep because I was like, shit, I just looked like this a couple months ago. I'm capable of looking like that, so let me just diet and look like that again. And maybe I put on a pound of muscle, so I'm going to look a little better. So I'm just going to diet and get back to that look. But guess what? My body's in a different starting position, so it didn't work like that. Not even close. It took me 24 weeks to get relatively lean. Not as lean as I previously did. I didn't look as good.
Okay, fair. As far as my answer to this, right? So I think it's back in 2018. I had a good off season, right? I didn't get as fat as I used to get, but I'd always make substantial leaps and bounds of progress in between shows. And I gave myself, we prepped for 16 weeks, and I just didn't place the way I wanted to, man. And it wasn't because I didn't take any. I had money, do whatever the hell I wanted. I showed up every day for the gym. Trust me, I was selfish. I was too selfish. But I was just managing different things in life. And I just didn't get the placing. And I was just like, maybe it's time for a change, right? That's where I changed. And at the time, I wasn't honest with my one coach at the time. So this is when I started working with Johnny, right?
What were you not honest about?
I didn't tell the coach I was done. I didn't want to break any kind of bond we had with each other just because I thought it might create more stress in my life and in that person's life. And I didn't want that to be the case. So I just pretended to keep checking in. And I was working with someone new. And the thing was that was so stressful. Mind you, you have two coaches now. And I came out of a show, all right? So I was in decent shape, I'd say, okay? And I know for me to get better, you're not going to put on muscle when you're in prep at a certain point. When you're in a deficit, you're not putting on muscle. I just needed to be inside out, peeled. So me going out of that first show, when I was the first current program with the same coach, food was getting upped. I was going to kind of coast in for a couple of weeks and then start to pull back harder. And when I went to Johnny, that motherfucker cut my food in like half. So now my cardio went up. My food was even lower coming out of my first show. So here I am. I'm like, all right, maybe I'll have a few easy weeks of like prep, right? And I'm just going to get better for this show 7 weeks later. My cardio was the highest it's ever been. My food was the lowest it's ever been. And I was just like going through the trenches, mind you, also needing to pretend that I'm following this other plan. So that's what was super stressful. Don't recommend it to anyone. I always tell people, be honest. I learned from my mistakes. But that's what was really challenging because my expectation, I guess, I never knew how hard I would have to push and what would happen. So that's why I say for some people, at that time, I never did 2 hours of cardio. But at this point, I was doing 2 hours of cardio. I was in the gym at one point more than I was sleeping, which is absolutely crazy.
That's disgusting.
Yeah.
Who was the coach? Do I know him?
Yeah. You know the coaches. Grant, what time are we at?
You're like an hour.
All right, so we're pretty...
That's pretty good.
Pretty good.
Ooh. This is about me here. But I'm curious about your answer. What are your biggest concerns going into this prep? Do you have an answer for me? What are your concerns about me going to this prep?
I think my biggest concerns is ensuring that we start in the healthiest place possible, mentally and physically.
Yep.
I know you are someone that does well under pressure, but like anyone, this isn't the Olympia, right? No. But for us, it's our version of the Olympia. You need to turn pro at this next show.
Oh, yeah.
So with that pressure, sometimes people fold a little bit, right? Yeah. So my main thing is making sure that you are ahead of where you need to be so you're very confident and you make the most progress, because just because when prep starts right now, winning the pro card is not going to happen when prep starts. It happens now, tomorrow, making sure you're getting your meals in, working out and training. So making sure you take advantage of the time left in 2023 is what I'm focused on. That's going to enable you to have the most success at doing this.
Well, we're doing that, Coach.
And what is your answer here?
What's my answer? What's my concerns? I guess for me, I agree. I think starting in the healthiest spot I possibly can, mentally and physically, would be optimal. It's not a concern of mine because like I can control it, and I am doing everything I can to control my health. So it's just like when that time comes, I hope it's great. I'll be doing everything in my power to make sure it's great. and nothing. I don't have to worry about last year. I got Grant back, right? We're going to do a really good series, so I don't have that stress for my life. I put in a lot of work to the point where I can say, like, I'm so confident. Not cocky. I'm not being cocky, like, hey, I'm going to destroy this. I'm just like, I'm excited to show the amount of work I put off, people have noticed, to see my new physique. So, yeah, I envision the day. I envision the shows. I'm excited for the moment.
Going back to a previous question, someone had asked, what would you have changed about last prep, or was there anything you would have done differently?
Okay, so we talk about the prep itself.
Yeah.
No. I would have changed the pose on stage too. I like that pose. I thought I assess my physique when I get closer to my leanness or closer to stage look. I look at what pose fits me. And last year, for some reason, the hand on hip, like, I wasn't liking it. It didn't feel comfortable. But funny enough, I did it the other day in the mirror after the shower, and I was like, motherfucker, I can hit the pose now. So I guess I would have changed that, but I didn't. So whatever, I lost. That's cool. I guess relatively nothing. That was the easiest prep for me. I didn't count steps.
Do you think it was the easiest prep?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, we did 35 minutes of cardio. Food timing wasn't bad. Training was fun. I had Allie. We're talking to you like every night.
Yeah.
The biggest thing was, like, I didn't kill myself with counting steps or anything like that. And my body just was, I think that was the leanest I ever was.
For sure.
So it was like,
it was just a matter of, you don't control who shows up, your experience, the pose that you had gotten bumped.
Yeah.
And then you just couldn't hit the pose anymore. I think if you didn't get bumped, that pose was good enough to win because you were in the middle.
I agree. Yeah, no, I got bumped, dude. My lat just cramped up and I couldn't hit it anymore.
Your lat hid.
Lat hit?
Lat hid.
Lat hid.
When hiding.
It did hide.
Yeah. But any other good questions? I went through all mine. I kind of answered.
I probably have more, but I saw this is a tongue twister. Before was. Before was is.
What the hell are you saying?
It makes sense. So think about it. Before the word was, now I'm going to use the word in the sentence was, now the word was, right? This is completely off topic. So think about the word was.
Yeah,
right?
I'm thinking.
Before the word was, like in the dictionary, was the word was. The word was, is. As in present, is.
People leave.
You understand it?
Yeah, I understand it.
That was pretty neat. No, we'll end on one more good question.
You have any questions that come to mind while he's looking? You have any questions that come to mind?
Why are you gay?
I got some weird questions, man. I skipped over those.
Oh, that's so funny.
There'll be one more good question. End with a good one.
All right, I guess we'll do this one for you. You ready? The person says, I know Kyle's a guru, but how does he know what to pull during the cutting phases? So I guess that's a great question. Like, as a coach, how do you know what foods to pull, when you pull fats, when you pull carbs, when you give a refeed, basically all your choices to the diet? How do you know what to do what?
You really wanted to end on a complex question, huh?
Yes, because I don't truly know the answer to, like, all of it. Like, I don't know, like, you know, how can you tell? Yeah, go ahead.
Starting with someone that you work with, you work these things out prior. You know what foods work well. Generally, as prep is going on, if there's a 16-week, the way someone's responding, some people can respond to very little changes. Metabolic adaptation doesn't take place. So if I drop 50 grams of carbs from you, I know, okay, he's going to lose 2 pounds of body fat because it happens every single time. For some people, their bodies adjust to where that change isn't enough to induce this 2 pounds anymore.
Okay.
When I feel that I get to that point and maybe the body's stalling a little bit, assuming other markers are consistent, you don't have weird shit going on at home, you know, no injuries, nothing, that's when I can say, okay, maybe I want to give this person more food for a day, no cardio. Maybe the next day they wake up, they drop weight. I know, okay, I got to keep in mind, perhaps I pushed them for a couple weeks now. Every so often I need to give them a higher day. How high the food goes depends on the body's response. So you might wake up the next day, the same weight. So I might say, okay, same diet again today.
So can I pause you and you'll remember
You can
where
pause me. Yeah.
All right. So do you give yourself room as a coach to be able to play with those type of things? So let's say someone's body, like you're cutting them down pretty hard, a couple weeks. and like they're stalling. Let's say you bump their food and tell them to stop cardio so their body relaxes. But let's say their weight shot up from that. Do you make sure you give yourself enough room to be able to counteract that again, or are you like, fuck, I fucked up?
So I think it's important when it comes to that timing. Again, we see what the target date is and when we need to be ready by. Someone that's smart plans to have a buffer. I'm not saying the buffer is a month now.
Yeah.
But there's at least 10 to 14 days where I'm like, okay, this person can kind of dick around a little bit, and I'm not worried about where they're going to be. Is that always needed? No, but sometimes it is in cases where something comes up. Maybe the person hurt their lower back. They're missing a week. I was prepping Mike Charles a few years ago. I think 2 or 3 weeks out, he hurt his back, couldn't train for a few days. I'm like, shit, can't do cardio, can't train. In my head, at first, had I not had experience, I'd be like, oh, maybe he can't prep anymore. Like, he's going to miss a week of prep. Well, you can't miss a week. But you work through that and you realize, okay, this person's ahead of schedule anyway. We'll take things day by day. And my biggest thing is, as a coach, I guess, is what I learned is, even if I'm unsure, don't let the person know that. Be very confident.
Well, yeah, of course.
So I think that's really important sometimes, because you want to be, when I work with somebody, I want them to trust me. I want to trust them. I don't want to ask my friends like, hey, he has me doing this. Should I do this? Because, again, you start thinking of different voices, and everyone's different. You're not going to have the same person say the same thing usually. And that's where you can kind of go off place. So, yeah.
So let's say a client a week out from a show eats like a fuck ton of honey, like almond butter. Is that detrimental, or do you have room to wiggle around?
It's not always the most helpful. So at that point, all I can do is consider and say, okay, right, this induced, maybe they're up a couple pounds. Perhaps if they didn't eat, depends how much they ate. I need them to be very transparent to tell me, hey, I ate a jar of peanut butter. I had that happen too. To where, yeah, man, like there's times in which I had another client right before Nationals. He was 2 days out, okay? 2 days out.
No way.
We do the same thing for the 3 weeks leading in, where I gave certain food on Friday, certain food on Saturday, look a certain way Sunday, look a certain way Monday. I did it 3 weeks in a row. Magically, going into that final couple days, I do something the one day, he wakes up, okay. The next day, he wakes up fucking watery, real watery, like bad. And I'm like, what the fuck? Oh, I ate some cookies. I felt like I could be okay eating some cookies. I'm like, bro, like what the fuck? Wind up getting third at Nationals. But, yeah, it wasn't the best idea,
Men's physique or?
No, it's bodybuilding.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. So I think it's just important, like I said, the more time you give yourself to work with somebody, the better relationship you establish, to where, again, I think the hardest thing I deal with now, a lot of people always say, I don't want to let you down. I don't want to let you down. I thought you'd be mad. No, like I don't. At one point, cool. I respect that people feel that way. But on the other hand, it's like, I want you to feel comfortable enough to tell me, like, hey, I fucked up. Like, this is what I did, and like, let's fix it. And that's what I prefer, because, again, I can't be in your shoes. I can't do everything. But at least if you tell me, we can work through it together. We can find a solution, and that's what we're supposed to do. It's a two-way street, coaching and the client. Again, there's tons of coaches out there. They all have different ways to do it. But what's most important is communicating. We have the same goal, man. You want to turn pro? I want you to turn pro. If you lose, I lose, right? So I always tell people, like, I get more satisfaction to seeing people win and turning people that are like slobs into, hey, you look pretty good.
Yeah.
Because to me, that's fascinating to see, hey, this person was a slob. I was able to guide them, and now they're really confident in how they carry themselves, and people actually ask them tons of questions of how they did that. I think that's pretty neat.
Yeah. All right. I think that's a great way to end it. Well, toodaloo, guys. That was episode 6 of the Iron Bros podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in. This podcast is also available on Spotify, and you can support any of us with using our codes, code Sir, code Ant, or code Grant on Young LA. And yeah, that's all. Toodaloo. Bye-bye.
No.